Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Talking Digital Media. I'm with Danielle Teychenne. Thank you very much for joining us once again, Danielle.
No worries.
We're going to talk a little bit about the future of education. I haven't even decided what I'm going to call this video because sometimes in these talks the keywords and that kind of thing come out during the conversation. We have no script, we're just winging it here, and so we'll just see where it goes, which is the beauty of being creative with digital media. Maybe just for people who haven't seen you in some of my other stuff before, if you could give a brief recap of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm an interactive media developer in the health faculty at Deakin University. So I create interactive online learning experiences, whether that be something from like maybe games, animations, videos, just trying to make meaningful, active learning experiences for higher education students. And that's really where I see higher education moving in the next decade or the next 5 years, really. Absolutely.
Day by day, yeah. Exactly right. And we came up with this idea quite fortuitously, I guess. We were talking about completely other stuff because we've got a web series we're starting up together called Our Gamified World. Just a quick promo there.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. It's my channel, why not cross-promote within? It's not even a cross-promotion, is it? So we were talking about different things, and then suddenly you were saying, oh, there's this cool stuff you could talk about in your when you talk to students about education with Google Classroom, and then you were talking about learning management systems in kindergarten and all this stuff, and you were blowing my mind at the time, and you were getting more and more excited as we were talking about it. So there's lots that we could talk about with the broad topic of digital media and education. Can you tell us a little bit about those two case studies, maybe to start off with?
Sure. I was kind of blown away with the kindergarten learning management system. So I was at a training workshop just recently, and I met a fellow colleague from my department, and we were talking about learning and teaching, and she's like, oh, well, my daughter who's 4 goes to a kindergarten, and I get daily updates sent to me via email from the kindergarten's learning management system. So updates like photos of her finger painting, videos of her interacting with, Lego, learning, different words, singing, things like that. So her child's learning is being tracked from age 4, and I was blown away. I was like, is this too extreme?
Even you.
Even me. Yeah. But I thought it was great. And it just made me think, well, with systems like that, they'll be in place. They'll be the norm in a couple of years. And then you've got, so the term reports, they won't even exist anymore, I don't think. And I was listening to a couple of teenage boys on the train the other day, and they were talking about how they had a learning management system at their high school which also tracked their attendance, and their parents had their own special login, so they could log in and check their son's work. And they're like, oh, my mum, she left her login logged into the computer, so I went in and hacked something and was able to make it look like I hadn't had any missed school days, any sick days, something or other like that. But isn't that amazing? Like, yeah, that it's just this real-time update.
Yeah, it's stunning. I mean, I go back to, it's easy for someone like me, getting old as I am, to make it strange, because I go back to my kindergarten days, and I could almost do that, partly because I did it for 2 years.
Yep.
And my mum didn't feel like I was social enough to go into grade prep, so I got held back in kindergarten. Not the quality of my learning, nothing like that, just my social skills, which no one can believe anymore that I was the shy person in class all the way through university until I taught. But that's a fascinating kind of thing, because all I know about kindergarten, probably from seeing my younger siblings there, is just cut up fruit, sitting on beanbags, getting read a story or something like that. But fundamentally different kind of stuff now. And the idea that you it's not so much that it's kids especially, but even students in the educational systems after that have a sense of all this stuff. With the cameras, we can see at least probably 2 just from where we're sitting here in the Burwood Corporate Centre, built frontage building at Deakin's Burwood campus. So that's not even in people's mindsets.
No.
But it is a fundamental difference, and we've grown up, or younger generations, so-called Generation Next, digital natives, all that stuff, have grown up being tracked, and it's just normalised. And so those kids, when it comes to kindergarten, my parents knew that I ate an orange or an apple or whatever it was. I mean, it's kind of easy to fall into and you said your instinct was, oh, is that too much?
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into a dystopian outlook, but we kind of know that a lot of the stuff that we talk about now, it's going to be pretty normalised already for a lot of people, and certainly many more people in the future. So, yeah. And tell us a little bit about Google Classroom, because this is potentially another huge development.
Yeah, so Google Classroom is a pilot project from Google currently. It's a learning management system project where it utilises all of Google's tools like Drive, Calendar, email, Hangouts, uses all these tools, and it also presents a very, it's like a very similar to Desire to Learn, Brightspace platform where teachers can communicate with their whole class. So they might have everyone using an iPad, and communication works through this platform where they'll say, okay, your assignment is due in 2 weeks, this is the criteria, and people can submit their assignments online and share it. It's very similar to what we use in higher education. But for me, coming from a country town, we had computers in the library. A couple of classrooms had computers, but we had nothing like that. We had paper handouts still. Back in 2010, it was, I think of the contrast now. I'm like, how did I get into this role if I was working with paper and textbooks in 2010? It would have been great to have a learning management system. Like, we sometimes emailed our English teacher. Most of the time she didn't reply. So having that constant communication, that would be fantastic for students, I think.
Yeah. It's an interesting time management issue for teachers as well, I imagine, because, email, high school, it would have, I don't know. I think they had an email address toward the end, but no students had it. It was completely, but now I have actually met quite a number of high school teachers who are kind of, I suppose, relied on or expected to reply to students, probably even on weekends, and they do that. It's just that's the kind of main form of communication in some high schools between students and teachers when they're not in the same class, which they obviously often are. It's interesting that you say that about the lack of computers and things. When I was in grade 6, and the idea of a security camera, I'd be very interested actually, when that started to come in at the primary schools, that kind of thing. If even now, if they're real, who knows? But the computer that I saw was only one computer in primary school when I was in grade 6, and only grade 6s were allowed to use it. It was in the portable for the grade 6s, and I got to use it more because I wrote creative stories. So I remember that, the teacher makes me sound like a teacher's pet, but I remember I got to type up some stories and things, but really it was just Carmen Sandiego and one other cool game, Jack and the Beanstalk, and that was it. It was like, oh wow, a game. But now, with gamified learning and everything that we've got coming through, the future of education and the present of education looks so much different. Yeah, I remember back to when I was all throughout primary school, stickers were like this amazing thing. I valued stickers a lot. Yeah. I just got ticks on the board. Oh, okay. And that was when you were being bad, so that's cool. We even had a system where if the whole class behaved, we reached a certain level of stickers, we could choose a reward, and we all chose McDonald's for lunch. It was the greatest day ever. Anyway, but I wouldn't be surprised if Google or any other learning management system aimed at primary school and high school students would utilise those those techniques, those tools, gamification. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, exactly right. And why we're talking about this, probably some viewers might be thinking, oh, they're talking about their personal experiences. They're just reminiscing on the good old days. Well, we need to make it strange for people, because a lot of people just don't realise the strangeness of the world that they're living in right now, much less what they probably went through in primary school and so on. That's a really crucial thing to do. So please keep that in mind if you're one of my students out there and listening to this. the tracking of students, the use of cards, student cards for different purposes, not just library borrowings, what kind of data that can bring in, learning management systems such as Cloud Deakin and other systems at the university. I tell students I can find out pretty much if I wanted to, and I like to think that I've got a bit more of a life than to want to do this, but I could find out the number of times the Cloud Deakin sites are accessed, when they're accessed, for how long they're accessed, what is looked at, for how long it's looked at. All that kind of stuff is there at my fingertips. Other systems, all personal contact details and so on. Complete academic histories, all that sort of stuff. So it's an interesting time. We don't want to sound too utopian because Google Classroom does raise an interesting issue around ownership of information and what access different organisations and even sort of countries have. Because something like Turnitin, which is an American program, all stuff and some people have a problem with things like Turnitin because all stuff that goes through that is obviously going to certain servers of different companies, perhaps out of this country. Yeah. So it's an interesting kind of issue on Google. The use of Google products and that kind of thing does raise those kinds of issues too, and it'll be interesting how we negotiate those.
That is an interesting spin. I didn't really consider what is Google going to do with all of this learning content, with all of these assignments that students are submitting. I wonder because currently they're taking applications from primary schools and high schools all around the world, and I wonder whether they'll be using that data and forming some conclusions about where each country or each region lies in terms of their quality of teaching and learning. I wonder that is a really big question mark. I mean, whether they use that information for good or whether they use that information for bad.
Not so good. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the whole issue of tracking and evaluating kind of even on an institutional level, the My Schools program several years ago in Australia, that was a huge, I mean, just the discussion along those lines for ages, become a huge political issue, obviously. Certainly people on all kinds, stakeholders on all kinds of the spectrum were getting involved in it. So surveillance, and I love the term eduvalence. I think I heard it first by my PhD student who's writing an adolescent novel around the use of sort of social media behaviours and surveillance in school systems. And she used this term eduvalence, which I might not have ever heard before, and you can't Google it and find very much. No. I actually Googled it and found a place that I'd used it, so I don't know if it's really used. But surveillance and education don't seem to be necessarily kind of the first intersection with this issue we jump to, but it is an inherent part of it with both pros and cons. Yeah. So, yeah, great. Well, I think we've talked heaps to get people started, a great conversation starter. Thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else you can think of talking about? Oh, gosh, I think maybe if you want to look more into analytics in higher education, learning management systems, that's a massive industry that currently at Deakin we haven't harnessed enough of it. And I would love to do some research projects in terms of e-learning and engagement to see whether my approaches are working, and so that's a massive question mark. Exactly right. Thank you very much for watching, and speak to you next time.